let's just get right into it. That was a beautiful one. Let's get one more. D4, and you guys know the drill at this point. C4. We're not afraid of losing this pawn. The knight comes out to c6. Bit of a strange move. Knight to c3. Not in a rush to release this bishop. So yeah, he takes on c4, but I wouldn't push e4 right away. Notice that this pawn is double attacked, and losing this pawn will immediately be losing for us. So knight to f3 instead. Defend the pawn. It's completely defended now. E3 works too, but I think in this situation, even though E3 is normally my way of playing, E4 works a lot better for me, especially with his two knights that we can chase around. And yes, this is exactly why we play E4. Notice the bishop comes out to defend the C4 pawn. I told you guys at the start of the series that you can never defend the c4 pawn. No matter what you do, there will always be some sort of loss. And in this situation, simply just d5. D5, and we immediately win a minor piece. And I believe we'll trade off queens as well. And we won't even take back with the king. We'll take back with the knight and reserve our castling rights. And then maybe even bishop c4 at the end of all this. It comes with a tempo too. So the pawn takes back. Probably knight to h5. Knight to h5 makes sense because it at least defends the pawn. But nope. He instead takes back with another knight, which is also a mistake because of queen d5. And the knight can simply just take the queen after queen takes. And we're threatening fork. Up a full minor piece. And if he does defend the fork, which would be something like king d8, then perhaps knight to g5. He does not defend the fork, though. He instead just moves the knight to a5. We have the fork. And in this way, it's already pretty much over. But he's hanging with us here. He's going to keep playing it through, try to win this knight back. I could make his life a little bit harder with an idea like bishop f4, which would defend the square and make it a bit harder for him to win. But bishop d2 is probably the more sound idea, saying, yeah, I know you'll win this knight eventually, but no, let's try to save the knight and play good practice, because also knight to c7 is coming. Maybe f6 followed by push, but then maybe knight just takes here. And then after pawn takes back, bishop takes, and we'll at least win 2 pawns for a minor piece at the end of that line. So notice what I'm saying here. F6, and he's going to push e5 to block out the bishop. So bishop to c7. And in this situation, he was going to win the knight either way. But now, in this way, we at the very least win an extra pawn. And it's like a sneaky little desperado idea, really. And notice that if he does take the knight, it's also just losing. So, this is a good move because he's checking the king. And if I go to d1, we have rook check. And if I go to e2, we have rook pin. But the knight's still here. So maybe it's best to just play e2 and not give him the extra tempo. And then, yeah, there we go. So he takes back, but this is a mistake as well because we simply just have knight to f7, discovery check on the king, rook is hanging, and there's nothing you can do. It's just over. Without the rook, you have a bishop and a knight and no hope. Solid start to the speed run. The 1000s have been pretty easy so far. This works fine for me. Bishop takes. Bishop takes. Notice the knight's defending the square. So just winning everything, really. We'll get the rook out to d1. And we'll... do we have to save the knight here? I mean, this knight is coming back to c6. So maybe I do just develop my knight. Just keep moving the knight to the center of the board, and maybe d2 or king d2, king e3. I know people think that that these situations tend to favor the minor pieces, but I want you guys to note the king is a very strong piece in any endgame situation. We can attack his pieces. So our knight is sufficiently back in the center of the board. We have our king on c2, and notice that I'm blocking off all of the king's squares. And maybe ideas of pawn a3, knight c5, checkmate. So we'll see if that's possible here. But I do have mate in 2 right now if he doesn't defend. Not sure how he would defend. I guess the only move would be a7. The only move would be knight a7, I should say. Or knight b7, right? So knight b7 would have at least stopped the knight from coming in. I want you to notice that a3 check, the king squares are completely blocked off. So he'll be forced to play king a4, and then this will be checkmate. And it turns out to be a very stuffy position for white. Good game.